Hi, I'm Tania Roa,
And I'm Adriana Medina.
and this is the Closing the Gap podcast.
There are a lot of gaps in society: the racial wealth gap, gender equality gap, resource accessibility gap, and more.
To help close these gaps, we'll share stories that go against the status quo so we can all gain new perspectives and begin a journey towards collective healing. Hi everyone, my name is Tania,
And I'm Adriana.
and we are excited that you're joining our podcast. This is our first episode, and so we're just going to get into why we wanted to do this, who we are, and why you should stick around.
Yeah, really, Tania and I have been talking about this podcast for a while now, and we're just both really excited to finally be kicking this off. Really, we're both best friends. We've been knowing each other since high school. And as we've gotten closer, we've noticed how we do both like relate on a lot of different issues. I would say, like, out of all of my friends, Tanya's like the one person that I really feel comfortable talking about different things that are going on in the world, and really realize, like, wow, we do this so often. Why don't we make a podcast about it and like really go deeper into these issues that we kind of talk about every now and then?
Definitely, social issues can be super overwhelming, super heavy, and they can sometimes feel like they make you feel alone in the world. And so I think it's definitely better to talk them out, and especially with people that you're comfortable with. So that's why we have each other. But also, the idea with this podcast is that we can invite more people into these conversations because we have a limited view of the world. We're both Latinas, even though we're from different parts of Latin America. That immigrant side of us does lead to some similarities. So we will be inviting people from different backgrounds too.
Yeah, and really, to kind of add on to that, why I like talking to Tanya and why we kind of hope to include other guest speakers is just knowing that the different perspectives that we provide. A little bit about my background: I currently work in advertising. I'm more of like the corporate side of the workspace, and I do feel like a lot of the views that I kind of get are a different kind of polished version of it. Really, when you're in the office space, you can only go so deep, and it's really nice to, like, Tanya, I know like you're a part of like the nonprofit kind of realm, so I like hearing your perspective.
Yeah, I'm definitely anti-corporate, anti-everything. And it shows in, I guess, what I try to do. I work for an environmental nonprofit right now. I definitely plan to stay in the field, not necessarily at this organization all my life, but I guess you never know. On the side, I also write articles, and I just try to engage with activists. Another thing that we were discussing when we were trying to create this podcast is that we like to go to protests. We like to, call our representatives, sign petitions, and so we're all about taking action. So this podcast will be ending with every episode how you can take action, how you can move through all these emotions and then make that lead into something positive. Because at the end of the day, we all need hope. As crazy, as wild as this world can get, it definitely is important to make sure that we just maintain in a healthy, healing space, and that we are there for each other, for our communities.
Most definitely. And again, this podcast too is to serve as a reminder that your voice can always be heard and that you're not alone. I know diving into these issues, it's easy to kind of feel overwhelmed. I know personally, everything that went on last year, it was a lot to take in. Even the beginning of this year, it really was just like a lot to take in. But we do have to remind ourselves that there's something that we can do. We have voices, and there's always something that can be done.
So now that you know more about why we wanted to do this podcast and the fact that we've known each other for a while, I'll just get into my personal background, just so I'm very transparent about my experience, where I'm coming from, because obviously my perspectives, my views that you will hear throughout this podcast are going to be shaped by my experiences. So I'm Colombian American. I was born in California, but my parents, both of them, are from Bogota, Colombia, the capital of Colombia. And they're from very different parts of Bogota too. My mom was on the poorer side. My dad was on the richer side. They are kind of like the, I don't know, star-crossed lovers, I guess. And so they came to the U.S. when, I mean, I'm sure you all have heard, Pablo Escobar, the cartels, cocaine, blah, blah, blah. They came during that time. And although a lot of people that, at least them and my other family, my tios and my tias, they will tell you that they came because of that, right? The cartel violence, which was horrible. I mean, there were bombs going off near my mom's building, actually, where she worked. But I would add on to that it's not just the cartel's fault. There was also a lack of willingness to take action, to lead on the government side of Colombia, and also because of the influence that foreign powers had, especially the US, that led to a lot of other factors being involved. So just that background kind of teaches you, or I guess kind of shows you why my parents came here, the trauma that we have in between our generations, and the reason they wanted to come and build a better life for me and my brother, even though we didn't exist yet. And here I was raised with, I mean, all the Colombian traditions that they could bring over. So food, my mom cooked for us, she still does, and holidays. I have my tios and my tias and my primos, so my aunts, uncles, cousins. A good amount are here, although a lot of them are back over there. So we did have our traditions here as well. So even though I was raised in American society and, went to school in English, I do have a lot of experience with not feeling like I'm fully an American, because in a lot of spaces I wasn't welcomed as one because I spoke Spanish, because I guess some people think I look different, but we'll all get into that later. So it is kind of an interesting dynamic, just being from two places, but also almost being from nowhere at the same time. And so I spoke Spanish since I was young, and I still do. And that does impact in good and bad ways. It's a blessing and a curse, because it opens doors, but it also closes others. So just that duality of everything, of the Colombian American experience, is basically where I'm coming from. And my whole idea behind my work that I talked about earlier, my environmental work, my justice work, is really because of the Colombian values that my mom has brought, and seeing how those are treated in American society. And that's exactly what I want to speak out against.
Yeah, and similarly as Tania, like I also have my dad is an immigrant. He immigrated to the US when he was about 20 years old. He came from a small pueblo near Mexico City. While my mom, although she was born here, she did grow up with two parents that came from Zitácuaro, Michoacan. I actually did not grow up speaking Spanish. I feel like I was a little bit discouraged from doing that, just because the experience that my mom had growing up, it was really looked down upon to be speaking Spanish. She was living in Maywood at the time. Now it is kind of more Latinx populated city, but back then when she had first started living there, it was still kind of a white neighborhood. And she's told me stories of how although they were friends with those neighbors, a few of them did kind of look down on them, and she remembers hearing a lot of different like microaggressions. And because of that fear, I do feel like my parents pushed me a little bit more to speak English in public, and they didn't really force me to speak Spanish at home. That is something I kind of regret now that I'm older. I've noticed how it kind of did keep me from being able to relate with my Mexican culture. And similar to Tania, just being someone with brown skin, I know, although like I did grow up here in America, and I was able to have English as my first language, I did kind of feel a little different. I did realize I didn't quite fit into like white society, and growing up and just seeing the difference of thankfully growing up in this generation where diversity is slowly becoming more and more celebrated, I've realized like I need to put more of an effort to learn more about my culture, learn more about where my parents come from, and take pride in that. That's another reason why I wanted to do this podcast, is to just kind of have an opportunity to dig deeper into those issues and really further understand the importance of being able to identifying with your culture.
So that is where we come from, but like we said earlier, this isn't just about us, and it's not even just about Latinas or Latinos or Latinx community. It's about all of us. It's all about all people of color, Asian Americans, Black Americans, Indigenous, and so many more, that we do plan to have guest speakers because we are very aware that our experiences are limited, our points of view are limited. We want to not only learn from all those other speakers, but we also want to provide a platform for them because we do think that these stories are very important.
Yeah, and if anything, what we've learned in the past year of everything all of these different social issues that have been coming up, we've learned that we need to take more of an action in educating ourselves, and we recognize that in order to do that, we do need to have other voices heard, and which is exactly why we want to have these guest speakers come on, because we recognize the expertise that they're able to provide in certain areas that we may have not been exposed to before.
So the kind of topics we're thinking of bringing up are things like racism, sexism, all of the isms really, and imperialism.
There's so many.
There's just so many. It's so bad. But yeah, definitely not just to bring them up and then say, okay, go on with your life now that you know all this information. The idea is to dive in with an open mind, a curious heart, and to come out knowing that with this knowledge you can do good in the world and that you can change it, and change is possible, but we need to believe that it's possible first.
Definitely.
Also, we plan to maybe talk about topics that don't seem as heavy as that, but that may seem important for the speakers that we have. So we are still brainstorming, but it's definitely going to be a wide range of topics that we just feel don't get talked enough in either mainstream social media, mainstream news, and that we just need to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, and I know Tanya's a little bit more like involved in it. I've been trying to get more into it, but we also want to discuss environmental topics. We know how important that is and how it kind of even becomes a racial issue. A lot of communities that are being affected by environmental injustices are BIPOC communities. So that's another topic we did want to dive into as well.
Yes, climate change.
We love
climate change.
No, we don't love climate change.
We love talking about it, I guess.
Yes, we do.
I do love talking about it.
Pick up your damn trash, guys. No, I'm just kidding.
But yes, this is definitely going to be a journey for all of us, for us too, for everyone involved. That is our goal, that you all feel like you're a part of this. And we'd love for you to reach out, to email us, to follow us, subscribe, because this is going to be community. That's our goal. We're all in this together.
We hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please follow us on whatever streaming platform you use.
To learn more, you can follow us on Instagram at closingthegappod or email us at closingthegappod@gmail.com with questions and feedback. Thanks for listening. Until next time.